The great space station called Nexus Prime floated in the void between three star systems. It was huge, bigger than most moons and filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Today was special. Representatives from 847 different alien species had come together for their monthly meeting. Ambassador. Veltari walked through the long corridors with her forearms swinging gracefully. Her blue skin shimmered under the artificial lights. She was from the Hegemony, the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Behind her floated 3 holographic displays showing data about a small, unimportant solar system. The meeting hall was enormous. Thousands of different creatures sat in special seats made for their bodies. Some had tentacles, others had wings, and many had shapes that would make humans feel sick just looking at them. But they all had one thing in common today. They were talking about the same boring topic they talked about every month. The Silent Ones, Veltari announced as she reached the speaking platform. Her voice carried through translation devices to every creature in the hall, the species from the third planet in the Sol system. They still refused to answer our calls. A creature that looked like a walking tree made a sound like wind through leaves. The translator turned it into words. How long has it been now? 312 years, Veltari replied. She touched one of her holographic displays. Pictures appeared in the air above the crowd. They showed primitive spacecraft that looked like metal tubes with fire coming out the back. Look at their technology. Chemical rockets. Metal hulls. They still use weapons that throw pieces of metal at each other. Laughter filled the hall. Not the kind of laughter humans would recognize, but sounds of amusement from hundreds of different species. Some clicked, others buzzed, and a few made sounds like breaking glass. A delegate from the Traders Guild raised one of his 6 eyes. Have they developed faster than light travel yet? No, Veltari said. They have not even left their own solar system except for small probes. Their fastest ships would take thousands of years to reach the nearest star. What about their communications? Asked another voice from the crowd. Veltari smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp. Still using electromagnetic waves. Radio signals that travel at light speed. Primitive beyond belief. The hall erupted in more laughter. These humans were clearly not worth anyone's time. Some species in the galaxy were young and needed guidance. Others were hostile and needed to be controlled. But the humans were just nothing. Too primitive to be useful, too weak to be dangerous. We should leave them alone, declared the representative from the Nexari, an ancient race with powerful minds. In a few thousand years, they might develop something interesting. Until then, they are not worth our attention. The vote was unanimous. The humans would remain on the list of uncontacted primitive species for another year. Meanwhile, far away in that supposedly primitive solar system, Captain Hansol stood on the bridge of a ship that did not officially exist. The battleship Indomitable hung in the darkness behind Earth's moon, hidden from any eyes that might look for it. Captain, said Communications Officer Yu Jin, turning from her station, we just received the transmission from Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council meeting ended 20 minutes ago. Hansol nodded. His face was calm, but his eyes showed satisfaction, and same as always. They think we are too primitive to matter. The vote to maintain non-contact was 847 to 0. Excellent. Hansol walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Earth was visible as a blue and white marble in the distance. How many ships do they think we have? Yujin checked her screen. According to their surveillance, we have approximately 200 small spacecraft. All chemical-powered, all metal construction, all primitive weapons. Hansol smiled. The truth was very different. Hidden in asteroid belts behind moons and in deep space, humanity had built a fleet that would shock the galaxy. The Indomitable was just one of 50 massive warships, each one larger and more advanced than anything the aliens had ever imagined. Sir, Yujin continued, Admiral So-Young requests an update on the quantum communication network. Tell the Admiral that all nodes are functioning perfectly. We can now listen to every major conversation in the galaxy without anyone knowing we exist. For 3 centuries, humanity had played a careful game. When the first alien probe had entered their solar system, they could have destroyed it easily. Instead, they had let it scan what they wanted it to scan. Old rockets, simple satellites, primitive radio transmissions. The aliens had left, satisfied that humans were just another young species that would need thousands of years to become interesting. They had no idea that humanity had already mastered faster-than-light travel, artificial gravity, and energy weapons that could crack planets. "Captain," said Tactical Officer Dong Wu from his station, "long-range sensors are detecting increased military activity in the Kalathi sector." Hansol turned. "What kind of activity?" "Fleet movements. Large ones. The hegemony appears to be gathering ships near the border with coalition space." Yujin frowned. "Think they are planning something?" "The hegemony is always planning something," Hansol replied. "They have been the galaxy's dominant power for over 1,000 years. They do not stay in power by being peaceful." He walked back to his captain's chair and sat down. Around him, his crew continued their work in silence. They were all volunteers, all sworn to absolute secrecy. The existence of their ship, their technology, and their mission was humanity's greatest secret. "Sir," Yujin said quietly, "if the hegemony starts another war—" "We watch," Hansol said firmly. "We listen, we learn, and when the time is right, we act." He looked at the tactical display showing the positions of major fleets across the galaxy. The hegemony had 8,000 warships. The coalition had about 3,000. Other major powers had fleets numbering in the hundreds. None of them knew that humanity had been building ships in secret for 3 centuries. None of them knew that human technology was already decades ahead of anything in the galaxy, and none of them knew that every conversation, every plan, every secret transmission was being recorded and analyzed. "The galaxy thinks we are sleeping," Hansol said to his bridge crew. "Let them keep thinking that. When we finally open our eyes, the universe will never be the same." Admiral Zexton stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of over 2,000 hegemony warships. Each ship was a masterpiece of destruction, armed with plasma cannons that could melt through any armor and protected by energy shields that had never been broken. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer. "All fleets report ready for the advance." Zexton nodded. His 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he looked at the tactical map. For months, the hegemony had been planning this operation. The Virith coalition had been growing too bold, too independent. They had started refusing trade agreements and questioning hegemony authority. Such behavior could not be allowed to continue. "Begin the assault," Zexton commanded. Across space, 2,000 warships moved forward like a wave of death. Their target was the Virith home system, a collection of 7 planets that had been independent for over 500 years. The coalition had a fleet, but it was small and outdated compared to hegemony might. The first battle lasted only 3 hours. The Virith defense fleet of 400 ships fought bravely, but their weapons could barely scratch hegemony shields. Plasma beams tore through coalition hulls like paper. When the smoke cleared, only 12 Virith ships had survived, and they fled deeper into coalition space. On the planet Virith Prime, evacuation sirens wailed across the great cities. Families packed whatever they could carry and ran for the evacuation ships. Children cried as they were separated from their homes. The elderly moved slowly, many choosing to stay behind rather than face the uncertainty of refugee life. Admiral Kethra of the Coalition fleet received the desperate transmission from her homeworld as her surviving ships limped toward the next system. Her people were being slaughtered, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The hegemony had too many ships, too much firepower, too much of everything. "Ma'am," said her communications officer, "we are receiving surrender offers from 7 coalition worlds. They want to avoid what happened to Virith Prime." Kethra closed her eyes. She could not blame them. When faced with overwhelming force, surrender seemed like the only way to save lives. But surrender to the hegemony meant slavery for her people. Far away on Earth, Admiral So Young watched the destruction through intercepted transmissions. The secret human base on the moon's dark side was buzzing with activity as intelligence officers analyzed every detail of the hegemony attack. "Admiral," said Intelligence Chief Mira, "our analysis shows the hegemony is using their new plasma lance technology, beam weapons that can cut through a planet's crust in minutes." So Young studied the battle recordings. "Shields, adaptive energy barriers. They adjust to counter whatever weapon hits them. Very effective against known technology." "Known technology," So Young repeated thoughtfully. "What about unknown technology?" Mira smiled. "That would be a different story entirely." In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, construction crews worked around the clock on humanity's secret project. The shipyard hidden inside the hollow asteroid was vast enough to build vessels that would dwarf anything in the galaxy. Chief Engineer Tejo supervised the installation of the final components on their newest creation. "How much longer?" asked his assistant. 2 more weeks for the primary systems," Tejo replied. "Another month for full testing. The gravitic drive alone is more complex than anything that has ever been built." The ship taking shape in the hidden shipyard was called Revelation. It was humanity's first official entry into galactic politics, though no one in the galaxy knew it existed yet. At over 5 kilometers long, it was larger than most space stations. Its weapons were based on scientific principles that the rest of the galaxy had not even discovered. Back in Coalition space, the war continued with terrible efficiency. World after world fell to hegemony forces. The Coalition fleet, once numbering 3,000 ships, was reduced to fewer than 300. Refugees fled in every direction, begging other species for sanctuary. But the galaxy turned away. The hegemony was too powerful to oppose. Trade guilds canceled contracts with Coalition members to avoid economic punishment. The ancient Nexari locked their borders and refused to help. Even warrior cultures that claimed to value honor chose neutrality over destruction. Admiral Zexthon was pleased with the progress. 17 worlds had fallen in just 6 months. Coalition resistance was crumbling faster than he had expected. Soon the entire rebellion would be crushed, and hegemony rule would be stronger than ever. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we have intercepted Coalition communications discussing a desperate plan." "What kind of plan?" "They want to contact the Silent Ones, the primitive species from the Sol system. Coalition intelligence believes they might have hidden technology." Zexthon laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "The Silent Ones? Those primitive creatures with their chemical rockets? Even if they had hidden technology, what could they possibly do against the hegemony?" "Exactly what I thought, sir. But Admiral Kethra seems desperate enough to try anything." "Let her try," Zexthon said. "When the primitives refuse to help, it will break whatever hope the Coalition has left." On Earth, President Jinwu sat in the secure conference room beneath the Geneva complex. Around the table sat the leaders of humanity's secret government, the people who had guided their species for 3 centuries while the rest of the galaxy believed they were primitive savages. "The Coalition is dying," reported Admiral So Young through a secure holographic link. "Our projections show they have less than 2 months before total collapse." "And the refugees?" asked President Jinwu. "Millions of them. Families torn apart, entire cultures facing extinction. The hegemony is not just conquering territory. They are erasing the Coalition from existence." Defense Minister Han Wu leaned forward. "The humanitarian crisis is massive. But if we intervene now, we reveal everything we have worked for. The galaxy would see us as a threat," agreed Economic Advisor Yuna. "Every species would unite against humanity if they knew our true capabilities." President Jinwu stood and walked to the window. Outside, normal human life continued. People went to work, children played in parks, and none of them knew that their species possessed technology that could reshape the galaxy. "How many will die if we do nothing?" he asked. "Conservative estimates suggest 50 million Coalition civilians will be killed or enslaved," So Young replied. "Worst-case scenarios reach into the hundreds of millions." The room fell silent. These were the decisions that leaders hoped they would never have to make: save strangers and risk everything, or protect their own people by staying hidden. "Admiral," President Jinwu said finally, "what is the status of our fleet?" 50 capital ships ready for combat, 200 support vessels, all equipped with technology decades ahead of anything in the galaxy. If we commit to action, we could end this war in days. And afterwards? Afterwards, the galaxy would know that humanity is not primitive. They would know we have been lying for 3 centuries. They would know we are powerful enough to threaten anyone. President Jinwu looked around the table at the faces of humanity's secret leaders. Each of them understood the choice they faced. Continue hiding and let millions die, or reveal themselves and face whatever consequences came. Continue monitoring the situation, he decided. If the Coalition falls completely, if genocide becomes certain, then we act. But not before. In the depths of space, the war continued. Ships burned, worlds fell, and refugees fled into the darkness. The galaxy watched in fear as the hegemony's power reached its peak. But in a hidden shipyard, the revelation neared completion. and humanity prepared for the day when hiding would no longer be possible. The Coalition command ship Hope's Light drifted through the debris field that had once been the Caleth Defense Fleet. Admiral Kethra stood before the tactical display, watching red marks disappear one by one as hegemony forces finished off the surviving Coalition vessels. Another defeat, another step closer to extinction. "Admiral," said her communications officer, "we are receiving final transmissions from Caleth Prime. The planetary shields have failed." Kethra closed her eyes. Caleth Prime had been home to 40 million Coalition citizens. Now it would become another hegemony slave world, its people forced to serve their conquerors or die resisting. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. 43 vessels still capable of combat," replied her tactical officer. "Most are damaged. Ammunition is running low across the fleet, 43 ships. 6 months ago, the Coalition had fielded 3,000 warships. Now they were down to fewer than 50, and the hegemony was stronger than ever." "Ma'am," said Intelligence Officer Moraki, approaching with a data pad, "I have been reviewing the files on uncontacted species. There might be one option we have not considered. If you are about to suggest asking the Nexari for help again, save your breath. They have made their position clear. Not the Nexari, the silent ones, the species from the Sol system." Kethra turned to look at him. "The primitives? The ones who still use chemical rockets?" "Yes, but consider this. They have been contacted by every major power in the galaxy over the past 3 centuries. Not once have they responded. Not once have they even acknowledged that they know we exist. Because they are primitive savages who probably do not understand our transmissions." Moraki activated his datapad. "Perhaps, but our deep space sensors have detected some unusual energy signatures from their system, patterns that do not match their supposed technology level." "What kind of patterns?" "Gravitational anomalies, quantum fluctuations, energy readings that suggest they might have capabilities beyond what they display publicly." Kethra studied the data. It was thin evidence, but desperate times called for desperate measures. "Even if you are right, why would they help us? They have ignored the galaxy for centuries." "Because," Moraki said quietly, "they might be the only species that does not fear the hegemony. Think about it. Every other civilization has either submitted or been destroyed, but the silent ones remain silent. Either they are too primitive to understand the threat or they are confident enough to ignore it." The idea was insane. But with 43 ships against the entire hegemony fleet, insane might be their only option. "Prepare a diplomatic vessel," Kethra ordered. "Small, fast, designed to look non-threatening. If we are going to beg primitives for help, we might as well do it properly." 3 days later, the Coalition ship Distant Hope dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Captain Jamin of the Earth Defense Force received the alert on his patrol vessel Invisible Guardian while conducting a routine patrol near Neptune. "Contact, sir," reported his sensor operator. One vessel, small, moving slowly toward the inner system. "Configuration matches Coalition design." Jamin nodded calmly, though inside he felt excitement. This was what humanity had been waiting for. First contact with a species that needed their help. "Activate stealth mode and intercept," he ordered. The Invisible Guardian vanished from sensors as its advanced cloaking system engaged. Using gravitic drives that left no heat signature, the human ship moved to intercept the alien vessel. On the Distant Hope, General Moraki watched his sensors with growing confusion. They had detected a brief energy spike near Neptune, but now there was nothing. The system appeared empty except for the primitive satellites orbiting the inner planets. "General," said his pilot, "we are receiving a transmission." "From where?" "Unknown. The signal appears to be coming from empty space directly ahead of us." The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. Moraki had seen pictures of the silent ones in the Galactic database, but seeing one in person was different. The creature looked surprisingly intelligent, with alert eyes and a confident expression. "Coalition vessel," said Captain Jamin in perfect galactic standard. "You are entering restricted space. Please state your purpose." Moraki was shocked. The primitive was speaking flawless galactic standard, the language used by advanced civilizations across the galaxy. How was that possible? "I am General Moraki of the Vireth Coalition," he replied. "We request an audience with your leadership on a matter of galactic importance." One moment. The transmission cut out. Jamin immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth Command. Within minutes, he received his orders directly from President Jinwoo himself. Allow the aliens to approach Earth, but maintain the illusion of primitive technology. Coalition vessel, Jamin said when he reopened the channel. You are cleared to approach the third planet. Be aware that you will be monitored at all times. Thank you. May I ask how you learned our language? Jamin smiled. We are good listeners. On Earth, emergency sessions convened at every level of government. The moment humanity had prepared for was finally here. A species was asking for their help, and the decision they made would determine the future of human civilization. President Jinwoo met with his senior advisors in the crisis room. Admiral So-young attended via secure hologram from the lunar base. They are desperate, So-young reported. Our intelligence shows the coalition has fewer than 50 combat vessels remaining. The hegemony has over 8,000. What exactly are they asking for? Asked Defense Minister Han-woo. Unknown yet. But given the situation, they are probably looking for any help they can get. Weapons, ships, sanctuary for refugees. Foreign Minister Yu Jin raised a concern. If we help them openly, the hegemony will learn about our capabilities. They might decide we are a threat. They might, President Jinwoo agreed. But if we let the coalition fall completely, millions will die. Can we live with that? The room fell silent as everyone considered the moral weight of the decision. Sir, said Admiral So-young, I recommend we meet with them. Learn what they want. We can decide how much to reveal based on their specific requests. 2 hours later, the Distant Hope landed at a remote airfield in the Australian outback. General Moraki and his small diplomatic team were met by President Jinwoo himself, along with a carefully selected group of human officials. Moraki was surprised by how normal the meeting facility looked. Basic concrete construction, simple technology, nothing that suggested advanced capabilities. But the humans themselves were impressive. They moved with confidence and spoke with intelligence that seemed inconsistent with their primitive reputation. General Moraki, said President Jinwoo, welcome to Earth. We understand you have urgent matters to discuss. President Jinwoo, Moraki replied, I come to you because my people are facing extinction. The Kalathi hegemony has destroyed most of our fleet and conquered 17 of our worlds. Millions of our people are dead or enslaved. We are aware of the situation. Our long-range sensors have detected the conflict. Moraki was shocked again. Long-range sensors capable of detecting events hundreds of light years away. That was not primitive technology. I must ask directly, Moraki continued. Do your people possess military capabilities beyond what is publicly known? President Jinwoo exchanged glances with his advisors. This was the moment of truth. General, he said carefully, humanity has always believed in being prepared for unexpected situations. We may have certain defensive capabilities that we prefer to keep private. Would those capabilities be sufficient to challenge the hegemony? That would depend on the circumstances. Moraki leaned forward. President Jinwoo, my people are dying. Children are being sold into slavery. Entire cultures are being erased. If you have the power to help us, I beg you to consider it. The room fell silent. President Jinwoo looked at the desperate alien general, then at his advisors, then back to Moraki. General, he said finally, humanity will consider your request, but understand that any assistance we provide would come with enormous risks for both our species. Risks we are willing to take. Give us time to deliberate. You and your people are welcome to remain on Earth while we decide. As the meeting ended, Moraki felt both hope and confusion. The humans were clearly more advanced than they appeared. But how advanced? Were they capable of challenging the hegemony? Or were they just another minor power trying to avoid attention? In the lunar base, Admiral So-young reviewed the encounter with her senior staff. What do you think? Asked Captain Han Sol. I think the time for hiding is almost over, So-young replied. The question is whether we reveal ourselves to save the coalition, or wait until the galaxy is completely under hegemony control. And if we wait, then we might be the only ones left to fight. The Battle of Vorthak Prime would be remembered as the last stand of the Vireth coalition. Admiral Kethra stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the tactical display with grim determination. 43 coalition ships faced 800 hegemony vessels in the space around her people's ancestral homeworld. All ships report ready. Admiral, said her communications officer. Kethra nodded. Below them, the ancient planet of Vorthak Prime was evacuating its last civilians. Millions of refugees crowded into transport ships, fleeing a world their ancestors had called home for over 2,000 years. "Send the message to the hegemony fleet," she ordered. Across space, Admiral Zexthon received the transmission on his flagship. The Coalition Admiral appeared on his screen, her face showing the exhaustion of months of constant defeat. "Admiral Zexthon," Kathra said, "I offer you one final chance to withdraw. Leave our worlds and our people in peace, and we will consider terms for a negotiated settlement." Zexthon laughed. "Admiral Kethra, you have 43 damaged ships against my 800. Your people are scattered across the galaxy as refugees. Your military has been crushed. What possible terms could you offer? The knowledge that you could have shown mercy when you had the chance. Mercy is weakness. The hegemony does not negotiate with rebels." Zexthon cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Begin the assault. I want every coalition ship destroyed and that planet secured within 6 hours." The battle was a massacre. Coalition ships fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered 20-1. Their weapons, designed for defense and patrol duties, could barely scratch the advanced armor of hegemony warships. Meanwhile, hegemony plasma cannons tore through coalition hulls like paper. Within the first hour, half the coalition fleet was destroyed. The survivors fought on, trying to buy time for the evacuation ships to escape. One by one, brave crews gave their lives to protect the fleeing civilians. On the planet below, the great cities of Vorthak Prime burned under orbital bombardment. The planetary defense grid, built over centuries, was shattered in minutes by focused plasma strikes. Ancient monuments and cultural centers were reduced to slag and ash. "Admiral," reported Kethra's tactical officer, "the hegemony has broken through our defensive line. They are targeting the evacuation ships." Kethra watched in horror as hegemony fighters began attacking the defenseless transports. Ships carrying thousands of families were vaporized in seconds. Children, elderly, civilians who had never hurt anyone, all erased because they had dared to resist hegemony rule. "All remaining ships," she broadcast on the fleet channel, "protect the transports at all costs." Her remaining 17 vessels charged into the attacking fighters, sacrificing themselves to save the fleeing civilians. It was hopeless, but it was all they could do. Across the galaxy, other species watched the destruction through emergency broadcasts. The ancient Nexari sent thoughts of sympathy but took no action. The trade guilds issued statements of regret while maintaining their profitable relationships with the hegemony. Warrior cultures that claimed to value honor found reasons to stay neutral. In the Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Veltari watched the battle reports with satisfaction. The Coalition had been a troublesome element in galactic politics for too long. With their destruction, the hegemony's dominance would be complete. Any species offering sanctuary to Coalition refugees will be considered enemies of the hegemony, she announced to the assembled delegates. "Trade sanctions and military action may be taken against those who interfere with our operations." The warning was clear. Help the Coalition and face the consequences. On Earth, President Jinwoo stood in the Emergency Command Center watching the same broadcasts. Around him, his advisors argued about humanity's response. "We cannot intervene directly," insisted Foreign Minister Yu Jin. "The moment we reveal our capabilities, every species in the galaxy will see us as a threat." "But we cannot let this continue," countered Defense Minister Han Wu. "They are committing genocide while the galaxy watches." Admiral So Young's voice came through the secure communication system from the lunar base. "Mr. President, I need to report that the Revelation is ready for combat deployment. All systems have passed final testing." "Admiral," said President Jinwoo, "what is your assessment of our capabilities against the hegemony?" "Sir, our technology is approximately 50 years ahead of anything they possess. A single ship like the Revelation could defeat their entire fleet. But once we act, there will be no going back to anonymity." President Jinwoo watched the tactical display showing the final moments of the Coalition fleet. Only 7 ships remained, surrounded by hundreds of hegemony vessels. On Vorthak Prime, the last evacuation ships were struggling to escape the atmosphere while fighters hunted them down. "Mr. President," said Intelligence Chief Mira, "we are receiving reports of mass executions on captured Coalition worlds. The hegemony is not just conquering territory. They are systematically eliminating anyone who might resist in the future." "How many dead so far?" "Conservative estimates put the number at 50 million. If current trends continue, the entire coalition population could be extinct within a year. President Jin Woo closed his eyes. For 3 centuries, humanity had hidden in the shadows, building their strength while the galaxy remained ignorant of their existence. They had planned to reveal themselves gradually, when they could control the situation. But genocide was happening now. Children were dying now. Families were being torn apart while humanity sat safely hidden behind their deception. Admiral So Young, he said into the communicator, "Prepare the revelation for immediate deployment." "Sir?" So Young's voice carried surprise. "Are you authorizing military intervention?" "I am authorizing humanity to stop hiding. The galaxy thinks we are primitive savages. It is time they learned the truth." In the lunar shipyard, alarms began sounding as the massive vessel prepared for its first mission. Captain Hansol took his position on the bridge of the most advanced warship ever built by human hands. Around him, a crew of 50,000 prepared for the moment that would change galactic history forever. "Captain," reported Navigation Officer Eugene, "course laid in for Vorthak Prime. Estimated travel time at maximum velocity 18 minutes. Weapon status?" Hansol asked. "All systems online," replied Chief Tactical Officer Dongwu. "Singularity cannons charged and ready. Gravitational shields at full power." Hansol activated the ship-wide communication system. "Crew of the Revelation, this is your captain. Today we end 3 centuries of secrecy. Today we show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Today we stop the slaughter of innocent people and establish our species as a galactic power." The ship's gravitic drives hummed to life, bending space-time around the massive vessel. Reality twisted as the Revelation prepared to cross hundreds of light years in minutes. "Sir," said Communications Officer Mira, "we are receiving Admiral So Young's final authorization." Hansol looked at the tactical display showing the dying coalition fleet. Admiral Kethra's flagship was badly damaged, surrounded by hegemony vessels closing in for the kill. On the planet below, the last evacuation ships were being hunted down by enemy fighters. "Engage," Hansol commanded. The Revelation vanished from lunar space, leaving only a ripple in space-time to mark its passage. At Vorthak Prime, Admiral Zexton was enjoying his victory. The coalition fleet was all but destroyed, the planet was under hegemony control, and the refugees were being systematically hunted down. Soon the rebellion would be nothing but a memory. "Sir," said his sensor operator, "I am detecting a massive gravitic disturbance approaching the system." "What kind of disturbance?" "Unknown, sir. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database." Zexton frowned. "Could it be a coalition reinforcement fleet?" "Impossible, sir. The coalition has no remaining ships. This is something else entirely." On her dying flagship, Admiral Kethra received the same sensor readings. Her science officer looked confused as he tried to identify the approaching anomaly. "Admiral, whatever is coming, it is larger than our biggest battleships. The energy output suggests a vessel over 5 kilometers in length. That is impossible. No one builds ships that large." "Nevertheless, ma'am, something is approaching at incredible speed. It will be here in less than 2 minutes." Kethra stared at her tactical display. Her people were dying, her fleet was destroyed, and her world was burning. But something was coming. Something unknown. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel hope. "All ships," she broadcast, "prepare for unknown contact. Whatever is about to happen, be ready." Across the battle zone, both coalition and hegemony forces detected the massive object approaching at impossible speed. Sensors strained to identify the unknown vessel, but its design matched nothing in galactic databases. In 60 seconds, the galaxy would discover that humanity had been watching, waiting, and preparing. In 60 seconds, everything would change. Space itself seemed to tear open above Vorthak Prime. A massive distortion appeared in the void, growing larger and larger until something impossible emerged from within it. The vessel that materialized was beyond anything anyone had ever imagined. 5 kilometers of smooth, dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its design was alien to every known civilization, following principles of engineering that defied conventional understanding. Admiral Zexton stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "What in the name of the void is that thing?" "Unknown vessel," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed." The response came in perfect galactic standard. spoken with calm authority. "This is Admiral So Young of the Terran Federation warship Indomitable. You will cease hostilities immediately and withdraw from Virith space." Terran Federation? Zexthon's intelligence officer checked his database frantically. "Sir, there is no record of any Terran Federation. The only species from that sector are the Silent Ones, and they are primitive savages." Zexthon felt his confidence waver for the first time in decades. The vessel before him was clearly not primitive. Its energy readings were off the charts, its size dwarfed his own flagship, and its very presence seemed to distort space around it. "Unknown vessel," he replied. "This is Admiral Zexthon of the Kalathi Hegemony. You are interfering in lawful military operations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Hansol stood beside Admiral So Young as they watched the Hegemony fleet. 800 vessels, each one armed with weapons that could destroy cities. For centuries, this fleet had been the terror of the galaxy. "Admiral," said Tactical Officer Dong Wu, "all Hegemony ships are powering weapons. They appear to be preparing to fire." "Let them," So Young replied calmly. "It will save us the trouble of hunting them down one by one." Admiral Zexthon gave the order he had never thought he would need to give. "All ships target the unknown vessel. Full plasma barrage. Destroy it now." 800 Hegemony warships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Indomitable erupted in a fury of energy beams that could have cracked a planet's crust. Plasma cannons that had never failed to destroy their targets focused their combined might on the human vessel. The attack simply stopped. Reality bent around the Indomitable as gravitational fields captured the incoming energy and redirected it harmlessly into empty space. The ship's shields did not even flicker. "Impossible," whispered Zexthon's science officer. "No known technology can deflect that much concentrated firepower." Admiral So Young watched the energy dissipate around her ship without concern. "Captain Hansol, you may begin." Hansol nodded to his tactical officer. "Target the flagship and the 300 vessels closest to it. Single shot from the primary weapon." "Yes, sir." Singularity cannon charged and ready. The Indomitable's main weapon was based on principles that the rest of the galaxy had not yet discovered. It created a controlled gravitational singularity and projected it at the target, causing spacetime itself to collapse around the enemy vessel. "Fire!" Hansol commanded. A beam of twisted spacetime lanced out from the human ship. Where it touched Admiral Zexthon's flagship, reality simply ceased to exist. The massive Hegemony vessel, along with the 300 ships around it, was not destroyed or vaporized. They were erased from existence as if they had never been built. The remaining Hegemony fleet stared in horror at the empty space where their commander had been moments before. There was no debris, no energy signature, no trace that hundreds of ships had ever existed. "This is Acting Admiral Morgeth," came a panicked transmission from the surviving Hegemony forces. "All ships emergency hyperspace jump. Retreat immediately." But the human ship was faster than anything in the galaxy. Using gravitational manipulation that allowed it to appear anywhere instantly, the Indomitable materialized directly in front of the fleeing vessels. "You may not leave," Admiral So Young announced calmly. "Your forces have committed acts of genocide against civilian populations. Surrender now and you will be treated according to galactic law. Continue to resist and share the fate of your admiral." One by one, the remaining Hegemony ships tried to escape. One by one, they simply ceased to exist as the human weapon reached across space to touch them. The survivors watched in growing terror as their supposedly invincible fleet was methodically erased by an enemy they could not understand. Within an hour, only 50 Hegemony vessels remained out of the original 800. These survivors finally accepted the impossible reality and powered down their weapons in surrender. Admiral Kethra watched from her damaged flagship as the battle ended. Her tactical officer turned to her with wonder in his voice. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel." Admiral So Young's face appeared on the screen. "Admiral Kethra, this is Admiral So Young of the Terran Federation. Medical and repair ships are en route to assist your wounded. The threat to your people has been eliminated." "Admiral So Young," Kethra replied, struggling to find words, "I do not understand. Your species was supposed to be primitive. How do you possess such technology?" So Young smiled. "Admiral, humanity has been watching the galaxy for a very long time. We prefer to observe before we act. Today, action was necessary. Across the galaxy, emergency sessions convened in every government as news of the impossible battle spread. The Galactic Council on Nexus Prime erupted in chaos as delegates tried to understand what had happened. The Silent Ones destroyed an entire hegemony fleet, Ambassador Veltari reported, her voice shaking. Their weapons are beyond anything we have ever seen. They erased ships from existence itself. The Nexari High Council, which had refused to help the Coalition, now sent urgent diplomatic messages to Earth requesting immediate contact. The trade guilds, which had abandoned the Coalition to preserve their profits, suddenly wanted to discuss exclusive trading arrangements with humanity. Warrior cultures that had claimed neutrality during the genocide now praised humanity's intervention as the most honorable action they had ever witnessed on Earth. President Jin Wu addressed the world in a broadcast that would be remembered for centuries. "My fellow humans," he said, "today we revealed ourselves to the galaxy. For 300 years we have watched from the shadows, learning about our neighbors while they believed us to be primitive. We let them think this because we knew that revealing our true capabilities too early would make us targets. But today, we could no longer stand by while innocent people were slaughtered. Today, humanity took its place as a galactic power, not through conquest or intimidation, but by standing up for those who could not protect themselves." 6 months later, the galaxy had been completely transformed. The Kalathi hegemony was dissolved. Its former territories granted independence under human protection. The Vareth Coalition was restored and rebuilt with human assistance. Refugee populations were relocated to new worlds that humanity helped them terraform. The Galactic Council now met on Terra Station, a massive human-built facility that orbited Earth. Ambassador Yujin represented humanity in the council chambers where they had once been dismissed as primitives. "The Terran Federation recognizes the sovereignty of all peaceful species," she announced to the assembly. "We offer protection to those who need it, trade to those who want it, and friendship to all who approach us with honest intentions." In the asteroid belt, massive shipyards now operated openly, building vessels that dwarfed anything the galaxy had previously imagined. The technology that humanity shared with their allies was decades ahead of anything that had existed before. Captain Hansol, now promoted to admiral, stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as it patrolled the space around Vorthak Prime. The planet below was being rebuilt with human assistance, its cities rising from the ashes better than they had ever been. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the Nexari High Council. They are requesting a formal alliance with the Terran Federation." Hansol smiled. 6 months ago, the Nexari had refused to help dying refugees. Now they wanted to be allies with the species they had once ignored. "Tell them we will consider their request," he replied, "after we finish helping the Coalition rebuild their worlds." In the depths of space, hidden shipyards continued their work. Humanity was no longer hiding, but they were still building. The galaxy had learned that the Silent Ones were neither silent nor primitive, but they had not yet learned the full extent of human capabilities. And perhaps it was better that way. Admiral So Young stood in her office aboard the Indomitable, looking out at the stars. For 3 centuries, her species had prepared for this moment. They had built fleets in secret, developed technology beyond galactic imagination, and waited for the right time to reveal themselves. That time had come when innocent people needed protection. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as conquerors but as protectors. They had shown their strength not to intimidate, but to save lives. The galaxy had frozen in terror when the human warship entered the battlefield, but now it was learning that humanity's true power lay not in their weapons, but in their willingness to use those weapons to defend the innocent. The Silent Ones were silent no more, and the galaxy would never be the same.